Alexander the Great had just conquered half the known world. He rode to meet the philosopher everyone was talking about, and found him lying in the sun by his barrel. "Ask me anything," Alexander said. Diogenes answered, "Stop blocking my light." Alexander reportedly said afterward, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." The most powerful man alive, envying the man who owned nothing. That tells you everything about what Diogenes was doing. Diogenes was born around 412 BC in Sinope, a Greek colony on the Black Sea. His father was a money changer, and Diogenes, or his father, accounts differ, was caught debasing the city's coins. They were exiled. Exile sounds like punishment. But Diogenes later said the oracle at Delphi told him to deface the currency, and he came to believe it meant something larger. Deface the currency of values, challenge what everyone takes for granted. He arrived in Athens with nothing, no money, no connections, no plan. He watched a mouse running around, not looking for shelter, not afraid of the dark, and thought, "That animal is freer than I am." He decided to live like the mouse. He begged for food. He slept in a large ceramic jar in the marketplace. He had a wooden bowl for water until he saw a child drinking from cupped hands. He smashed the bowl. The child had shown him he still owned too much. This wasn't poverty. It was argument. Every object he gave up was a statement. You don't need this either. Every comfort he refused was a question aimed at you. Why do you think you do? The school of philosophy he founded was called Cynicism, from the Greek word for dog. He embraced it. Dogs eat in public, sleep anywhere, answer to no one. He wanted to live like that. Naturally, without shame, without pretense. Athens in 400 BC was obsessed with reputation, what family you came from, what office you held, what people said about you in the agora. Diogenes found all of it embarrassing. Not radical, embarrassing. Like adults playing dress-up. He walked through the market with a lantern in broad daylight, looking at people's faces. When they asked what he was doing, he said, "I'm looking for an honest man." He never found one. He wasn't being cynical in the modern sense, bitter, jaded, defeated. He was making a diagnosis. Most people perform virtue rather than practice it. They want to be seen as good. That's not the same thing. Plato had defined man as a featherless biped. Diogenes showed up the next day with a plucked chicken, threw it into the lecture hall, and announced, "Behold, Plato's man." Plato added, with broad, flat nails to the definition. He didn't hate Plato. He respected him enough to disagree publicly, loudly, and at every opportunity. He called Plato's elaborate philosophical system much ado about nothing. He believed truth didn't need that kind of architecture. He ate in public. He slept in public. He did things in public that Athenians found scandalous. When criticized, he said, "If it's not wrong to do it, it's not wrong to do it in front of others. The shame is yours, not mine." Shame is a social mechanism. It keeps people inside the lines. Diogenes understood this and decided the lines were mostly arbitrary. Not all of them, but far more than anyone admitted. He wanted to find out which ones actually mattered. When someone asked where he was from, he didn't say Sinope. He didn't say Athens. He said, "I am a citizen of the world." It was the first recorded use of the word cosmopolitan. He meant it literally. No city owned him. He was captured by pirates at sea and sold into slavery in Corinth. At the slave auction, he pointed to a man in the crowd and said, "Sell me to that one." he needs a master. He was purchased, given his freedom, and put in charge of the household's children. His owner, Xeniades, asked what he could do. Diogenes said, "Govern men." He tutored Xeniades' sons: wrestling, poetry, memory, philosophy. Xeniades later said that a god had entered his house. He lived in Corinth for the rest of his life. Not as a slave, Xeniades freed him, but he stayed. He had no ambition to reclaim anything. Corinth was a port city, full of merchants and noise, exactly the kind of place a philosopher with a lantern could get to work. He had no school, no building, no formal students. His teaching was the street. He grabbed people by their ideas, exposed the gap between what they believed and how they lived, and walked away. That was the lesson. People came to mock him. He led them. Then he said something that made them think for a week. He was never defensive. Defensiveness means you care what they think. He had given that up, which left him free to be sharp. He said that the gods had given human beings an easy life, but they had complicated it by chasing luxury, status, and pleasure. The easy life was right there. Most people walked past it every day without noticing. He was deeply skeptical of desire, not because pleasure was evil, but because chasing it never ends. You get what you want, and immediately want something else. The wanting never stops unless you stop feeding it. He noticed that people trained their bodies obsessively, but never trained their minds to bear discomfort. He did the opposite. He rolled in hot sand in summer. He embraced cold statues in winter, not as punishment, as practice. This is one of the ideas that entered Stoicism directly. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, all of them practiced deliberate discomfort, cold baths, simple food, voluntary hardship. They were following Diogenes' logic: make yourself resistant. He wasn't an ascetic in the religious sense. He wasn't suffering for salvation. He was running an experiment. What do you actually need? Strip everything away and see what's left. What's left, he concluded, is quite enough. He was approached by a man who said he wanted to study philosophy. Diogenes handed him a fish and told him to carry it around for a week. The man dropped it after a day, embarrassed by the smell. Diogenes said, "A fish ended your philosophy career. Think about that." He used humor as a tool, not to entertain, to cut. A good joke lands where an argument can't. You can defend yourself against logic. You can't quite shake a joke that's true. He knew this and used it constantly. Someone asked him what he thought of death. He said it held no fear for him. They asked how he could be so calm. He said, "If I still have my reason, death is nothing. If I've lost it, I won't know enough to be afraid." He asked to be buried face down. When asked why, he said, "Soon everything will be turned upside down anyway." Even at the end, he was making a point. Death was just one more thing not worth performing anxiety about. He died around 323 BC, the same year as Alexander. Some accounts say he held his breath deliberately. Others say he ate a raw octopus. Most likely old age. He was approximately 90 years old. After his death, the Corinthians erected a monument, a marble dog, his chosen symbol. It read, "You taught mortals how to live with what they have." The man who owned nothing was remembered in stone. What he left behind was an attitude, not a system. No treatises, no school, no doctrine. Just a posture. Look at what you're doing and ask if it's actually necessary. Most of it isn't. That's not depressing. That's liberating. His influence moved quietly, but far. The Stoics built on him. The early Christian ascetics borrowed his style. Voluntary poverty, rejection of comfort, contempt for status. Even Francis of Assisi, 12 centuries later, looked a great deal like Diogenes. In the modern world, his name means cynicism, distrust, sarcasm, disillusionment. That's a misunderstanding. The ancient cynics weren't bitter. They were cheerful. They had worked out that most sources of anxiety were things you could simply put down. He would look at modern life and find it very familiar. The obsession with status, the performance of busyness, the anxiety about what other people think, the endless accumulation of things that don't make anyone happier. He would reach for his lantern. His question wasn't, how do I get more? It was, how much do I actually need? Those are very different questions. The first one has no answer. The second one, if you're honest, has a surprisingly small one. He wasn't telling everyone to give away their possessions. He was doing something more uncomfortable, pointing at the gap between what you say matters and how you actually spend your days. Close that gap, he said. That's the whole project. He lived in a barrel and died at 90, apparently content. That's either the saddest story in philosophy or the most successful one. It depends entirely on what you think success looks like. He thought you should answer that question yourself, carefully, before someone else answers it for you. He walked through Athens with a lantern, looking for an honest man. He never found one, but the question outlasted him by 2.5 millennia. And every time you ask what you actually need, rather than what you've been told to want, you're carrying his lantern.
Thank you for watching. If this video brought you any value, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. For more content like this, hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.